Sexathari stood in the shadows of his ship, watching the star charts glow on the holographic display. For 200 years, he had been the most feared assassin in the galaxy. Kings, generals, and crime bosses all knew his name. When someone wanted a problem removed forever, they called Sexathari. His forearms moved with practiced ease as he cleaned his biomechanical weapons. Each claw was sharper than any blade, each joint powered by technology that made him faster and stronger than most living creatures. His compound eyes could see in complete darkness, and his hearing could pick up a heartbeat from 50 meters away. The message had arrived 3 days ago through channels so encrypted that only the wealthiest clients could afford to use them. The offer was simple but incredible. More money than he had ever been paid for a single job. Enough credits to buy his own planet if he wanted. All for killing one human on a backwater colony world. Sexathari almost laughed when he read the details. Humans were the newest species in the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel a century ago. Most aliens saw them as weak and primitive. Their lifespans were short, their technology basic, and their bodies fragile compared to the established races. The target was named Jake Morrison. The file showed a man in his 30s with brown hair and ordinary clothes. He worked as a maintenance engineer at an atmospheric processing plant on Haven's Rest, a small human colony on the edge of civilized space. No military background, no political connections, no apparent reason why anyone would pay so much to see him dead. It seemed too easy. After decades of hunting the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, this felt like a vacation. Sexathari decided this would be his final job. After killing this human, he would retire to some peaceful world and spend his remaining centuries in luxury. His ship, the Silent Death, was built for stealth and speed. Its hull could bend light around itself, making it invisible to most sensors. The engines ran so quietly that they barely registered on detection equipment. It was the perfect tool for an assassin who needed to approach targets without being noticed. The journey to Haven's Rest took 3 weeks through hyperspace. Sexathari spent the time studying everything he could find about his target. Security. Cameras showed Jake Morrison walking to work each morning, eating lunch alone in the facility cafeteria, and returning home to his small apartment each evening. He had no wife, no children, no close friends. His life seemed boring and predictable. The colony itself was typical of human settlements. Simple dome structures protected the inhabitants from the harsh environment. The atmospheric processors worked constantly to make the air breathable. Everything was functional but crude compared to the elegant cities of older species. When Sexathari arrived at Haven's Rest, he activated his ship's cloaking systems and found a hiding spot in an asteroid field near the planet. His sensors showed him everything he needed to know about the colony's defenses. They were minimal, designed more to keep out wild animals than professional killers. He spent 2 days watching Jake Morrison's routine. The human left his apartment at the same time each morning, took the same route to work, and followed the same schedule every day. During his lunch break, he walked through the colony's small recreation area, usually alone. It would be the perfect place for an assassination. Sexathari had killed targets in crowded spaceports, heavily guarded palaces, and moving vehicles. This should be simple by comparison. One quick strike with his poisoned claws, and the human would be dead before he knew what happened. The colony's security would find the body hours later, with no clues about who had done it. But something felt wrong. In all his years as an assassin, Sexathari had learned to trust his instincts. They had kept him alive through hundreds of dangerous missions. Now those same instincts were telling him that this job was different somehow. He studied the intelligence about Jake Morrison again, looking for details he might have missed. The human's work record showed he was good at his job but not exceptional. His financial record showed a modest income and simple spending habits. His medical record showed he was healthy but unremarkable. There was nothing to suggest he was anything more than an ordinary maintenance worker. The client who had hired him remained anonymous, communicating only through encrypted messages. This was normal for Sexathari's line of work. Many of his clients preferred to keep their identities secret, but something about the way they wrote their messages felt strange. though he could not identify exactly what bothered him. On his third night of surveillance, Zexathari decided to get a closer look at his target. He used his ship's teleporter to beam down to the colony's outer perimeter, then activated his natural camouflage abilities. His skin shifted color and texture to match his surroundings, making him nearly invisible. Moving through the colony at night was easy. The security patrols were predictable, and the automated sensors were designed to detect large groups rather than individual infiltrators. Zexathari reached Jake Morrison's apartment building without being noticed. The building was simple, with thin walls and basic locks. Zexathari could have entered any of the apartments without difficulty, but he was not ready to kill his target yet. He wanted to observe the human in his natural environment first, to understand what made him worth so much money. Through a window, he watched Jake Morrison eating dinner and reading from a digital tablet. The human looked completely ordinary, showing no signs of the enhanced reflexes or hidden weapons that might explain the high price on his head. He went to bed early and slept soundly, leaving himself completely vulnerable to attack. Zexathari could have killed him right then. A single claw through the window would have ended Jake Morrison's life in seconds, but the assassin's instincts held him back. Something was not right about this situation, and he had not survived 2 centuries in his profession by ignoring warning signs. He returned to his ship to plan the assassination more carefully. Tomorrow he would make his move during Jake Morrison's lunch walk. It would be quick and clean, and then he could collect his payment and begin his retirement. But as Zexathari prepared his weapons and checked his equipment, he could not shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap. The galaxy's deadliest assassin had never failed to complete a contract, but he had also never encountered a target, quite like Jake Morrison, and the strange unease in his mind suggested that this ordinary human might be anything but ordinary. Zexathari positioned himself along Jake Morrison's usual walking path through the colony's recreation sector. The area was quiet during lunch hours, with most colonists either at work or eating in their homes. Trees and decorative plants provided perfect cover for an ambush. His biomechanical body crouched behind a large sculpture, completely invisible thanks to his natural camouflage. His 4 arms were ready, claws extended and coated with a paralytic venom that would kill a human in seconds. He had used this exact technique hundreds of times before. The target would walk by, completely unaware of danger, and then it would be over. Jake Morrison appeared right on schedule, walking slowly along the path with his hands in his pockets. He looked relaxed and peaceful, like someone enjoying a pleasant afternoon stroll. There was nothing in his posture or movement to suggest he knew death was waiting for him. Zexathari waited until the human was directly in front of him, then struck with the speed that had made him legendary. His claws moved faster than most eyes could follow, aimed precisely at Jake Morrison's neck. The attack should have been over before the human could even register what was happening. Instead, Jake Morrison spun around with impossible speed. His hand shot out and caught Zexathari's wrist in a grip that felt like being caught in a mechanical vice. The human's eyes met the assassin's compound vision, and there was no surprise or fear in them. Only a calm awareness that made Zexathari's blood run cold. "You are faster than I expected," Jake Morrison said in a conversational tone as if they were discussing the weather. "But not fast enough." The human's other hand moved in a blur, striking 3 precise points on Zexathari's armored torso. The assassin felt his biomechanical system stutter and falter as pain shot through his body. Morrison released his wrist and stepped back, apparently unconcerned about the deadly claws that had been inches from his throat. "Try again tomorrow," Jake Morrison said with what looked like boredom. "I will be ready." The human turned and walked away, leaving Zexathari crouched behind the sculpture in complete shock. In over 200 years of killing, no target had ever detected his approach. Most died without even knowing they were under attack. But this ordinary maintenance worker had not only seen him coming but had countered his strike with expert skill. Zexathari retreated to his ship, his mind racing with questions. He ran complete diagnostics on all his systems, checking his camouflage generators, his biomechanical enhancements, and his weapons. Everything was working perfectly. The human had simply been better. That night, he studied every piece of information about Jake Morrison again. The record still showed an ordinary man with an ordinary job and an ordinary life. There was nothing to explain how he had moved with the speed and precision of a master warrior. Nothing to explain how he had known exactly where to strike to, disrupt Vicarian biomechanics. The next day, Zexathari tried a different approach. He used a high-powered plasma rifle, positioning himself on a rooftop half a kilometer from Morrison's workplace. The shot was perfectly lined up, impossible to detect or dodge at that range. He squeezed the trigger, sending a bolt of superheated energy racing toward his target. At the exact moment the plasma bolt should have struck, Jake Morrison casually swung a piece of maintenance equipment he was carrying. The improvised shield deflected the shot harmlessly into the ground. Morrison looked up at the distant rooftop and waved, as if greeting an old friend. Zexathari tried poison next, introducing a deadly toxin into the colony's water supply that would specifically target human biology. The chemical was undetectable by normal means and should have killed Morrison within hours of consumption. Instead, the human seemed completely unaffected. Zexathari's sensors showed that Morrison had somehow neutralized the poison before it entered his system, though the assassin had no idea how that was possible. An explosive device planted in Morrison's apartment was defused and somehow transported to Zexathari's ship without triggering any alarms. He found it sitting on his pilot's seat with a handwritten note attached. "Nice try, getting warmer." Each failed attempt revealed more about his impossible target. Jake Morrison moved with fluid efficiency that spoke of years of combat training. He seemed to know when attacks were coming before they were launched. His casual attitude suggested he was actually enjoying their deadly game. After a week of failures, Zexathari began to suspect that Jake Morrison was not who he appeared to be. No ordinary human could possess such skills, but his research showed no evidence of military service, no connection to intelligence agencies, no training that would explain his abilities. The assassin tried increasingly creative methods. He attempted to crush Morrison with falling debris, only to watch the human step aside at exactly the right moment. He tried to run him down with a stolen vehicle, but Morrison leaped over the speeding transport with inhuman agility. He even attempted to flood Morrison's apartment with toxic gas, but the human had somehow sealed his living space and activated air scrubbers before the attack began. Most disturbing of all was Morrison's attitude. He never seemed worried or stressed. During the day, he continued his normal routine as if nothing was happening. At night, he would leave small challenges for Zexathari, testing the assassin's skills in return. One morning, Zexathari found a message waiting on his ship's communication system. "You are thinking too much like an assassin and not enough like a hunter. What do you really know about your prey?" The question haunted him. In his arrogance, Zexathari had assumed that killing a human would be simple. But Jake Morrison was proving to be the most challenging target he had ever faced. The man seemed to anticipate every move, counter every strategy, and stay one step ahead at all times. More troubling were the questions the situation raised. Who was Jake Morrison really? How had he acquired such extraordinary skills while maintaining the cover of an ordinary maintenance worker? And most importantly, why had someone paid so much money to have him killed? Zexathari began to wonder if he was the hunter or the hunted in this strange game. Each failed assassination attempt felt more like a test than a genuine effort to kill. Morrison's responses were always perfectly calibrated, neither too easy nor impossibly difficult. It was as if the human was measuring Zexathari's abilities while demonstrating his own. The realization that he might be walking into a trap came slowly. But by the time Zexathari understood what was happening, he was already too invested in the hunt to walk away. Jake Morrison had become more than a target. He had become a puzzle that the galaxy's deadliest assassin was determined to solve. As he prepared for another attempt, Zexathari found himself looking forward to the challenge. For the first time in decades, he was facing an opponent who might actually be his equal. The question was whether he was skilled enough to complete his contract or whether Jake Morrison would prove that even the most feared killer in the galaxy had finally met his match. After 2 weeks of failed attempts, Zexathari decided that direct confrontation was his only remaining option. He had tried stealth, ranged attacks, poison, and explosives. Nothing worked against Jake Morrison. The human seemed to anticipate every move before it happened. Late one night, Zexathari used his ship's teleporter to beam directly into Morrison's apartment. He expected to find the human sleeping, finally vulnerable after days of constant alertness. Instead, Jake Morrison was sitting in his living room, calmly sipping from a steaming mug. "Coffee?" Morrison asked, gesturing to a second mug sitting on the small table beside him. "I know Vicarians can process caffeine. Figured you might need it after the week you have had." Zexathari's forearms tensed, his biomechanical weapons charging. Every instinct told him this was a trap, but his curiosity was stronger than his caution. "You knew I would come here." "Of course," Morrison replied, taking another sip of his drink. "You are methodical and professional. Eventually, you would want answers more than you would want my death." He paused and looked directly at the assassin. "Though I am curious about something myself. Who hired you?" "Contracts are confidential," Zexathari hissed, his mandibles clicking with irritation. Morrison nodded as if he had expected that response. "Professional ethics, I respect that. But here is the thing, Zexathari. Yes, I know who you are. I think we are both being played." The assassin's compound eyes widened in surprise. Very few people knew his real name, and fewer still would dare speak it aloud. "Explain." Morrison set down his mug and activated a device on the table. Holographic images filled the air between them, showing surveillance footage from various locations across the galaxy. Zexathari recognized himself in several of the recordings, moving through spaceports and colony worlds, but there were other figures in the images that he did not immediately recognize. "Your client is not who they claim to be," Morrison continued, manipulating the holographic display to show financial records and communication logs. "The payment trail leads back to a shell corporation owned by the Hegemony Intelligence Division. They have been recruiting assets for something big, something that requires testing the limits of both human and non-human capabilities." Zexathari studied the data with his enhanced cognitive abilities, analyzing the information at superhuman speed. The evidence was compelling and detailed. Financial transfers, communication intercepts, and surveillance reports all painted a picture of elaborate manipulation spanning months of careful preparation. "You are suggesting this entire contract is false?" Zexathari asked, though his analytical mind was already reaching the same conclusion. Morrison's smile was cold and humorless. "I am suggesting we are both lab rats in someone else's experiment. The question is, what do we do about it?" The assassin moved closer to the holographic display, examining the evidence more carefully. The Hegemony was a shadowy organization that operated across multiple star systems, conducting research and intelligence operations for the highest bidders. They were known for their ruthless methods and complete lack of moral boundaries. "They have been watching me for years," Morrison said, accessing files from his personal computer. "Every random assignment, every colony posting, all carefully planned to test my responses under different conditions." Zexathari examined Morrison's service records, noting inconsistencies that would have been invisible to most observers. The human had been placed in situations designed to reveal his true capabilities while maintaining his cover as an ordinary maintenance worker. Each assignment had been progressively more challenging, as if someone was slowly turning up the difficulty. "And my reputation made me the perfect test," Zexathari realized, the pieces falling into place. They wanted to see if their human asset could survive an encounter with the galaxy's most feared assassin. "More than survive," Morrison corrected, bringing up additional files. "They wanted to see if we could be turned into a team." The idea was both audacious and deeply disturbing. The Hegemony had orchestrated their entire confrontation, calculating that mutual respect born from combat would eventually lead to cooperation. It was psychological manipulation on a scale that impressed even Zexathari's cynical worldview. Morrison showed him more evidence. Records of other tests involving different species and individuals. The Hegemony had been conducting similar experiments throughout the galaxy, identifying exceptional individuals and manipulating them into situations where they could be studied and potentially recruited. They want to build the perfect black operations team, Morrison explained. Representatives from different species, each with unique abilities, all working together under their control. Zexathari felt a cold anger building in his chest. He had been manipulated like a puppet dancing on invisible strings. His professional pride had been wounded, and worse, his reputation as an independent operator had been compromised. "How long have you known?" he asked. Morrison looked thoughtful. "I suspected something was wrong from the beginning. The colony posting was too convenient, the timing too perfect. When you showed up, it confirmed my suspicions. No one would pay that much to kill a maintenance worker, unless there was a bigger game being played." Their conversation was interrupted by alarms from Zexathari's ship. The assassin accessed his vessel's sensors remotely, his biomechanical implants interfacing with the ship's systems. What he saw made his blood run cold. 12 heavy cruisers were decloaking around Haven's Rest, their hulls bearing the distinctive markings of hegemony forces. They had been waiting, watching, ready to collect their experimental subjects regardless of how the test concluded. 12 ships, Morrison observed, studying the tactical display that Zexathari was projecting. They are not taking any chances. Zexathari's biomechanical systems began cycling through combat protocols, preparing for battle. The colony has minimal defenses. Evacuation would be impossible with that many ships in orbit. Morrison stood up, his casual demeanor shifting into something much more dangerous. The change was subtle but unmistakable. His posture became more alert, his movements more precise, and his eyes took on a cold focus that Zexathari recognized from his own reflection. "Then we do not run," Morrison said simply. "We make them regret this little experiment." 2 individuals against an entire fleet? Zexathari's mandibles clicked with what might have been amusement or disbelief. Morrison's smile returned, but now it was the expression of a predator who had just spotted prey. "You really have not been paying attention to human military doctrine, have you? We do not fight fair when our survival is at stake." The human moved to a wall panel and input a complex security code. The wall slid aside, revealing an elevator that definitely had not been in the building's original blueprints. Morrison gestured for Zexathari to follow him. "Time to show you what this colony really is," Morrison said as they descended into the depths beneath the settlement, "and why the hegemony made a very big mistake when they decided to test us." As the elevator carried them down, Zexathari realized that Jake Morrison had been playing a much deeper game than anyone had suspected. The ordinary maintenance worker was about to reveal himself as something far more dangerous, and the galaxy's deadliest assassin was about to discover that humans were capable of surprises that even he had never imagined. The elevator descended much deeper than should have been possible. Zexathari's enhanced senses detected they were traveling at least 50 meters below the colony's surface level. When the doors finally opened, he found himself in a vast underground facility that stretched beyond the range of his vision. "Welcome to Haven's Rest Research Station," Morrison said, leading him through corridors lined with advanced technology. What you saw above ground was just the cover story. The facility was filled with equipment that made Zexathari's enhanced systems seem primitive by comparison. Weapons that hummed with barely contained energy, armor systems that bent light around themselves, and computers that processed information faster than most organic minds could follow. Everything was built with the functional efficiency that characterized human design but enhanced far beyond anything the assassin had seen before. "This is not a simple atmospheric processing colony," Zexathari observed, studying the technology around him. "No," Morrison agreed, accessing a control panel with practiced ease. "This is a research and development facility for experimental human military technology. I was not just maintaining atmospheric processors. I was testing equipment designed to give human forces an edge against superior alien technology." They entered a massive armory, where weapons and armor hung in organized rows. Morrison moved to a section marked with his name and began selecting equipment. Each piece was clearly designed for his specific use, customized to fit his body and fighting style. The hegemony wanted to see what humans could become when pushed to their limits, Morrison explained, strapping on a suit of armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal as it adjusted to his form. Let us show them exactly what they asked for. Zexathari watched in fascination as Morrison armed himself with weapons that appeared to violate several known principles of physics. Energy shields that could deflect starship-grade weaponry, rifles that fired projectiles through micro-dimensional tunnels to bypass conventional defenses, and most impressive of all, the combat suit that was enhancing Morrison's already formidable capabilities to superhuman levels. These technologies, Zexathari said, examining similar equipment that had been modified for his alien physiology, they are beyond what most species have achieved. Morrison nodded while checking his weapon systems. Humans learn fast when their survival is at stake. We studied every piece of alien technology we could get our hands on, then improved on it. The results are what you see here. The assassin accepted the modified equipment, marveling at how perfectly it integrated with his biomechanical systems. The armor enhanced his natural camouflage abilities while providing protection against energy weapons. The weapons were precisely calibrated for his four-armed fighting style and enhanced reflexes. "Why show me this?" Zexathari asked as they prepared for battle. "You could have let me walk into their trap unknowing." Morrison paused in his preparations and looked directly at the alien assassin. "Because despite what the hegemony planned, I respect you. You are a professional who takes pride in your work. You deserve to know the truth about what is happening." Above them, alerts began sounding throughout the facility as hegemony forces landed on the colony's surface. Surveillance screens showed dropships deploying hundreds of soldiers in advanced combat armor. They moved with the confidence of troops who expected minimal resistance from a backwater human settlement. "They will be disappointed," Morrison said, activating the station's defensive systems. Hidden weapons turrets emerged from concealed positions throughout the colony. Energy barriers sprang up around critical structures. The simple dome buildings suddenly revealed themselves to be hardened military installations disguised as civilian facilities. "The entire colony is a fortress," Zexathari realized, studying the tactical displays. "Every building, every street, every piece of infrastructure was designed with defense in mind," Morrison confirmed. "The colonists are all military personnel with cover identities. We have been preparing for this kind of attack for years." The first wave of hegemony troops entered the colony, expecting to face terrified civilians. Instead, they encountered coordinated resistance from hidden positions. The atmospheric processing plant revealed itself to be a command center, directing defensive fire with surgical precision. Morrison and Zexathari emerged from the underground facility through a concealed exit behind the hegemony lines. Working together, they began systematically dismantling the invasion force from behind. Morrison's strategic mind, enhanced by the colony's defensive AI, turned every street into a trap. Zexathari's natural abilities, amplified by human technology, made him a terror that struck from impossible angles with devastating efficiency. The hegemony had sent their forces expecting to collect compliant test subjects. Instead, they found themselves fighting a nightmare of coordinated destruction. Their advanced armor meant nothing against weapons that could punch through dimensional barriers. Their superior numbers were useless when every position was covered by overlapping fields of fire. "This is impossible," Zexathari heard one hegemony commander say over intercepted communications. The intelligence reports showed a simple colony with minimal defenses. "Intelligence reports can be wrong," Morrison replied over the same frequency, having hacked into their communication network, especially when the intelligence is exactly what you wanted to hear. The battle raged through the day and into the night. Hegemony reinforcements arrived only to find their landing zones under constant attack. Their ships were forced to retreat to higher orbit as surface-to-space missiles launched from hidden silos throughout the colony. By dawn of the second day, half the hegemony fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The surviving ships attempted to bombard the colony from orbit, but their energy beams were deflected by shields that had been hidden beneath the settlement's surface. "How is this possible?" Zexathari asked during a brief lull in the fighting. He had participated in battles across dozens of worlds, but had never seen defensive technology this advanced. Morrison reloaded his rifle with practiced efficiency. Human paranoia is a powerful motivator. We always assume someone is planning to attack us, so we prepare for everything we can imagine and several things we cannot. The third day brought desperate tactics from the hegemony forces. They attempted to use orbital bombardment weapons that could crack planetary surfaces. The weapons fired, sending beams of concentrated energy toward Haven's Rest that should have vaporized everything within a 100-kilometer radius. Instead, the beams struck massive deflector arrays that had been built into the planet's crust itself. The energy was redirected harmlessly into space, leaving the colony completely undamaged. "You turned the entire planet into a weapon," Zexathari said with something approaching awe. "We turned it into a fortress," Morrison corrected. "One that can defend itself against anything short of a stellar-class weapon." When the last hegemony vessel retreated into hyperspace, Haven's Rest still stood. Its defenders had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity was not the weak primitive species that other civilizations believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous, a species that learned from every encounter and prepared for the next threat. In the aftermath of the battle, Zexathari found himself at a crossroads. His old life as an assassin seemed hollow compared to what he had experienced fighting alongside Morrison. The human had shown him possibilities he had never imagined, and a purpose beyond simple killing for money. So what happens now? Morrison asked as they watched the sunrise over their battered but victorious colony. Zexathari considered the question carefully. He had come to Haven's Rest to complete a contract and retire. Instead, he had found something he had never expected: a partner who understood the art of war and a cause worth fighting for. The morning after their victory brought an unexpected quiet to Haven's Rest. The colonists emerged from their hidden bunkers to assess the damage and begin repairs. What had appeared to be simple farmers and workers revealed themselves as highly trained soldiers and technicians, moving with military precision to restore their defensive systems. Zexathari watched the organized activity with growing respect. Every person in the colony had multiple skills and backup roles. The baker could repair plasma generators. The shopkeeper was an expert in orbital defense systems. The children learned weapons maintenance alongside their regular lessons. "This entire settlement is a military unit," he observed to Morrison, who was coordinating the repair efforts from the command center. "Every human colony is," Morrison replied, checking status reports on multiple screens. "We learned early that the galaxy is not a safe place for our kind. Other species see us as weak because we are new. They think they can push us around or eliminate us without consequences." Jake Morrison had shed his cover completely now. Gone was the simple maintenance worker in plain clothes. In his place stood a military commander in advanced combat armor, directing defensive operations with the expertise of someone who had been preparing for war his entire adult life. "The hegemony will be back," Morrison continued, studying tactical projections. "They do not accept defeat easily, and we just embarrassed them in front of the entire galaxy. They will want revenge." Zexathari examined the same projections, his enhanced mind calculating possibilities and probabilities. "They will bring more ships next time, probably twice as many with heavier weapons." "Probably 3 times as many," Morrison corrected. "The hegemony does not make the same mistake twice. They will assume we have more hidden capabilities and plan accordingly." The assassin found this prospect oddly exciting, rather than terrifying. For centuries, he had hunted targets that were predictable and ultimately helpless once he decided to kill them. Fighting alongside Morrison against impossible odds felt more alive than anything he had experienced in decades. Over the following days, they worked together to strengthen Haven's Rest defensive capabilities. Zexathari's knowledge of assassination techniques proved invaluable in identifying weaknesses in their security systems. His experience with various alien technologies helped improve their sensors and weapons. Morrison taught him about human military doctrine, which emphasized preparation, redundancy, and the willingness to use any advantage available. Humans did not fight fair when their survival was at stake. They studied their enemies, learned their weaknesses, and exploited them ruthlessly. "Your species fascinates me," Zexathari admitted one evening as they planned defensive improvements. "Most races become complacent once they achieve interstellar travel. Humans seem to become more paranoid and better prepared. Morrison smiled at the observation. My grandmother used to say that just because you are paranoid does not mean they are not out to get you. Humans have survived by assuming that someone is always plotting against us. The assassin's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. In the galaxy we inhabit, that assumption is usually correct. Their partnership had evolved beyond simple cooperation. Zexthari found himself genuinely caring about Morrison's survival and the fate of Haven's Rest. The human had shown him possibilities beyond his old life of killing for money. Together they represented something new, a combination of alien precision and human innovation that was greater than the sum of its parts. 3 weeks after the first battle, long-range sensors detected the expected hegemony return. 47 ships approached Haven's Rest, including several dreadnought-class vessels capable of cracking planet surfaces. The force was large enough to conquer most star systems. They certainly learned their lesson about underestimating us, Morrison observed, studying the sensor readings. This force is 10 times larger than what they sent before, Zexthari calculated. Even with our enhanced defenses, the odds are not favorable. Morrison activated the colony's full communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies so his message would reach every hegemony ship. This is Commander Jake Morrison of Haven's Rest Colony. You are approaching a sovereign human installation. Turn back now or face the consequences. The response came from the fleet commander, transmitted on visual channels. A tall alien with scaled skin and cold eyes stared out from the screen. I am Admiral Kelthex of the Hegemony Fleet. You embarrassed us once, human. It will not happen again. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Morrison's smile was visible through his helmet's transparent faceplate. Admiral, you still do not understand what you are dealing with. Let me educate you. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for generations. Morrison did not activate hidden weapons or reveal secret defenses. Instead, he transmitted a single coded message that reached human colonies throughout the local sector. Within hours, 37 human ships dropped out of hyperspace around Haven's Rest. They were not military vessels in the traditional sense. They appeared to be cargo haulers, passenger transports, and mining ships. But as they deployed for battle, they revealed themselves to be something far more dangerous. Every human civilian ship is also a warship, Morrison explained to the increasingly worried Admiral Kelthex. We learned that lesson from species like yours. Our cargo ships carry planet-killer missiles. Our passenger transports have armor that can withstand star-class weapons. Our mining vessels can crack your hulls like eggshells. The Hegemony Admiral tried to maintain his confident tone, but Zexthari could detect uncertainty in his voice. You cannot bluff us with converted civilian vessels. Who said anything about bluffing? Morrison replied. The human fleet opened fire simultaneously, and the space around Haven's Rest erupted in violence. The disguised civilian ships revealed weapon systems that matched or exceeded anything the Hegemony had brought. Cargo haulers launched missiles that tore through enemy shields like they were made of paper. Mining vessels used their industrial cutting beams to slice enemy ships in half. But the most devastating weapon was coordination. Every human ship worked in perfect harmony with every other, sharing targeting data and tactical information instantly. They fought not as individual vessels but as a single organism with dozens of deadly parts. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Hegemony fleet was scattered wreckage floating in space. A few ships escaped to hyperspace, but most were destroyed or disabled. Admiral Kelthex's flagship was captured intact, its crew taken prisoner to be questioned about Hegemony operations. How? The Admiral asked when Morrison and Zexthari boarded his ship. Your species has only been in space for a century. How do you possess such capabilities? Morrison removed his helmet so the alien could see his expression. Because every day for that century, we have been preparing for someone like you to try to destroy us. We studied every species we encountered. We learned from every conflict we observed, and we built our entire civilization around one simple principle: never again. Zexathari understood the reference. Humans had a history of being conquered and oppressed by stronger powers. They had promised themselves that it would never happen again, and they had kept that promise by becoming stronger than anyone who might threaten them. The aftermath of the second battle brought delegations from dozens of species to Haven's Rest. Some came to negotiate treaties, others came to assess this new threat to galactic stability. All came away with a new understanding of what humanity represented. "The galaxy will never see your species the same way again," Zexathari told Morrison as they watched diplomatic ships arriving daily. "Good," Morrison replied. "We were tired of being underestimated." The assassin looked at his unlikely partner and friend. He had come to Haven's Rest to kill a human and collect enough money to retire. Instead, he had found something far more valuable. A purpose beyond simple killing and a partner who understood that sometimes the best way to preserve peace was to prepare for war. "So what do we do now?" Zexathari asked. Morrison grinned, the expression of someone who had just begun to explore new possibilities. "Now we make sure the rest of the galaxy understands that humanity is not going anywhere, and that anyone who thinks they can push us around will discover exactly how dangerous we can be when someone threatens what we care about." The galaxy's deadliest assassin had indeed completed his final contract, though not in any way his former employers had anticipated. He had killed Jake Morrison, the simple maintenance worker, and helped birth something far more dangerous. A human, warrior unbound by the need to hide his true nature. Together they would ensure that the galaxy never forgot what happened when someone tried to cage the most dangerous species in the universe.